Many of you have maybe had the opportunity to meet these two Philly guys, but they're just going to come share the nuts and bolts of law enforcement. Obviously, if you read the bio, they've been through some pretty crazy things, and they're just here to encourage us, point us the right direction, and let us know how we can better even come alongside our fellow officers and be an encouragement to them. So I'll turn over to these guys if you're ready to roll.
Ready. I guess I should say good morning, Elkhart, but it's afternoon. How are you guys doing? My name's Kevin Bernard. This is Mike Kelly, my old partner. I think they're going to put a picture up there in a second. Just to give you a quick bio before we get into this, Jim Bontrager had asked us to do the nuts and bolts of survival because of some of the stuff we've been through. And it's kind of crazy because to be up here and look out and see some of the heroes I see out there, you know, some of the guys that have gone through some major stuff that we haven't gone through, it's kind of humbling. But we've had the opportunity to be involved in things in our department that have tested us in more ways than one and has shown us that God is in our life. So we want to share that with you today. So to give you a quick bio, Mike has 26 years in the Philadelphia Police Department. He used to work in the 15th Police District in Philadelphia, which is a very active district. You have an upper end that is more or less affluent and a lower end that is totally ghetto and project-oriented. Mike has been involved in, can we turn this down just a little bit? I'm sorry. Mike has been involved in 4 combat shootings. He unfortunately has been in the front page of the Daily News for things that he was accused of that he didn't do. He's been in 4 motorcycle crashes. He's had 2 friends of his die in the line of duty, and he's had 1 friend die in his arms. I have 25 years on the job. I've been in 1 combat shooting. I've had a police officer killed in the line of duty. I've been on the front page of the Daily News for doing what I should have done. I was called a racist cop. I actually arrested the sheriff of Philadelphia. You'll find out about that. But God has done something in our lives. He put Mike and I on a path to be here today to speak to you guys. And when I explain to you how that path worked, I think you're going to find that kind of amazing. We both started right around the same time. Like I said, Mike's at 26, I got 25 years. I was off duty in Philadelphia, and driving home, a guy staggers in front of my car, blood hits my windshield. I'm thinking he's a drunk. I go around him because it's raining. Blood hits the windshield. I stop. Like, whoa, what the heck was that? Back up. And he says, I've been shot. And right away, I reach for my gun. I go, why would somebody want to shoot you? You know, I'm thinking he might be a bad guy. And he's like, they stole my car, and there they go. Well, I wind up locking the guys up. It was a big to-do. I don't want to tell war stories. But the bad guy gets locked up. My victim is also a bad guy who shot one of those bad guys. That guy, that job that I cleared, got me to go to the elite highway patrol in Philadelphia. Several weeks later, Mike Kelly's working, and he stops a car. Jump in at any point, Mike. He stops a car, all 4 doors open up, guys start blasting his shotguns with him. It's that same complainant is now the guy trying to kill Mike.
That was so Willie Smalls is the guy we're talking about. Willie Smalls,
yes,
ran a crew of guys, and what they did is they did financial exchange robberies. This dude was a bad dude. He's got several murders under him, and people won't talk. They still haven't convicted him for the murders. But on my day, which was February 7th, 1997, 10:15 in the morning, I go to stop a vehicle. Now, you got to remember, me and Kevin don't know each other. We're in 2 different
We've never met.
Yeah. So I think it's a stolen Jeep. We had about 15 new Jeeps taken out of a car dealership. Anyway, we go down the road and 3 guys in the vehicle turn around and they look at me, and I just think it's a stolen Jeep. So, I put out over radio, I'm going to stop this vehicle. I get in a foot pursuit. All 3 guys bail out. They crash, they bail out. And 2 guys, one guy with a shotgun, one guy with a fully automatic Uzi. Thank God he didn't know how to use it. So we exchanged gunfire. And I just want to share some because of everything that we hear in here today. And one of the things that was stuck out in my mind, and I kind of forgot about it, was while I was involved, there was the guy over here with the shotgun and the guy here with the Uzi, and I had no cover, so I laid on the ground, and I was returning fire. I had a 6-month-old son, and I knew everything that was going around, but I saw my son looking at me. And it's funny, I was just listening to someone today, and that brought back a lot of stuff. So, go ahead, Kev.
And just let me digress for 1 second. I want to tell you this from the beginning. Mike and I have never spoken together before, which is we believe that this is God ordained, but we've never done this together. We haven't rehearsed this. We've talked about what we wanted to say and what we wanted to do, but we felt as though God in our life has to lead this today. So we'll be as interested to see where we go with this as you are. But here's what happens. So Willie Smalls gets Michael to Highway Patrol because that job was a big job. Now in our Highway Patrol at the time, they were beefing it back up. And let me give you a overlay of Highway Patrol. We did work the road at one time. Some of you guys are state troopers, you work the road. Our Highway Patrol is not really a road team. You went to the road when you got old, or that's where you should have been on the road when you were old, not young. We had anti-crime teams, 2-man teams down in the ghettos. Our job was to fight crime in the toughest places in the city of Philadelphia. We were the cops that the cops called when they needed backup. When a cop needed a cop, they called Highway Patrol and we went in. We also had the unique pleasure and privilege of escorting every dignitary that came into town on motorcycles. There's been some changes in our department that I don't necessarily agree with, so some of that's changed recently. But up until that time, it was our unit. If the president came to town, our unit ran it. So there was a lot of prestige and a lot of heritage in our unit. So there was a lot of pressure to produce when you got to that unit. And to get there, it took an act of God. And if you didn't know somebody, the only way to get there was with a really good job. So here this guy, Willie Smalls, gets Mike and I to Highway Patrol. We don't actually like each other. When we first meet each other, we don't really hit it off from day one. We still don't, but that's okay. But here's the thing. We're the last 2 guys standing in the room when they put partners out. Everybody else that goes to Highway goes with a partner when they beef it up. And Mike and I are left sitting with each other. And it's kind of like, okay, we got to make the best of it. We're working together a couple months, maybe a year into it, I guess, and we fight like 2 sisters. I mean, from morning to night when we would go to work. And one day Mike comes in and he puts the CD in of his shooting. And we're listening to this shooting, and all night long we're turning a corner and we're hearing gunfire. Pop, 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 pop. And we're in an unmarked car in uniform. That was the other thing the Highway did. You worked in an unmarked car in a uniform. You know, you had lights and sirens, but you were in an unmarked car so you could stealth into the locations. And if you ever see Mike drive, we'll get into that later, it's unique driving in an unmarked car with Michael. So we're coming around a corner. Mike drops the CD in. And I listened to this CD, and we realized that the same guy got us a Highway. And at this point, as we're talking about it, the lady on the radio there's a 911 call on that CD, and it says, "Tell the officer not to turn the corner. They're waiting for him. They're waiting for him." And in the background, you hear pop, 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 pop. And I look at him, and I'm like, "Oh crap! Like I got a real good partner. This is unbelievable." And I'm like, "Dude, I hope to God if we ever get into this." I've really never talked about this before. I said, "I hope to God if we ever get into this that I'll have the courage to do that." And he said, "Dude, I may not like you, but I know one thing about you. You'll be there. You'll be all right." We turn the corner, and I go, "Mike, the dude's got a gun." He said, I know. I see him. Get out." I get out of the car, and dummy me, I slam the door. Dude goes, he takes off running, so I start chasing him. Well, next thing I know, 2 guys are running down the street. Unbeknownst to me, Mike sees a different guy with a gun. He sees one guy with a gun, I see a different guy with a gun. So now I'm running chasing 2 guys with a gun. And we had a thing where I would run, and I ran slow, so I would flush them out, and Mike would run them over. And, and he did. Well, he turns the corner to go get these guys, and he gets cut off. And now I'm in an alleyway. I've lost my radio while I'm running. My flashlight dies. There's a 30 amp light bulb in the alleyway somewhere. And there's a guy sitting behind a fence waiting for me to turn the corner. I'm yelling at one guy who's on the fence to get off the fence. He's got a gun in his back. And I'm telling him to get off the fence. And as I do, I look over and I see a flash from about here to those curtains that I realize he's waiting for me. So I start firing. And all I hear is a click, and I start shooting at him. And he goes across the thing. Long story short, Mike comes through the front door, gets the guys. He walks up to me, punches me in the chest. He goes, "Dude, don't you ever do that to me again. I thought you were dead." They were raising me for like 5 minutes in the alleyway. I never realized it went that long. It was forever. So that's how our paths came together. Then I made sergeant. I left. Mike went his own way. He figured, hey, he finally got rid of the horse head. He didn't have to deal with me no more. That was my nickname, by the way, Horsehead. He was Froggy and I was Horsehead. But I made sergeant. And this is just going to give you a quick overlay where our lives were before we get into this. So I make sergeant. We're done. I'm on the other side of the city. Sergeant Lubinsky, was it, Mike? Sergeant Lubinsky gets shot and killed. Cops being cops in Philadelphia, they're all playing follow the leader. I look over, I'm going, man, if I'm a bad guy, that's not where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in them woods over there. So I go over in the woods and nobody follows me. I just grab my gun, get into the woods, start looking for this bad guy. Next thing I know, I look up and who's there? Mike Kelly, one of the best cops I've ever worked with. He taught me more on this job. In my 25 years, my 3 years working with him, I learned more about being a cop. And that's why I was in those woods than I ever did from any classes or any bosses or anything else. So here I am, we're in the woods chasing bad guys, and we're back together. Bad guys get apprehended. We come out. Mike goes back on the street. I'm on a retreat. I'm on a retreat with a bunch of kids from my church. And pastors, we find out that a cop got shot in Philly, got killed. A guy by the name of Pulowski. John Pulowski gets shot and killed. Pastor says, listen, there's a cop's kid down here, man. You got to talk to him. He's really upset. He wants to go home. His dad, he's worried about his dad. And I said, who is he? He says, a kid by the name of Nolan. I said, Nolan? Nolan what? He says, Nolan Kelly. And Michael Kelly's kid? Yeah, that's him. So I go down and I talk, pray with the kid, call Mike on the phone. God put me in the right spot to be there for his son at a time when his son was having a really tough time about his dad being a cop. These things kept going on. An officer gets killed in the line of duty working for me, you're going to hear about. And because of that, I start a Bible study. And as I'm praying about the Bible study, somebody says, you have to have a second person. God never starts Bible studies or anything without two. He sends them out in two. And immediately Mike's name comes to my mind. And I chased Mike through the church parking lot for a couple months before I could get him involved with the study, and we started a ministry.
But just to go off of this real quick, me and Kevin worked really good together, and we fought really good together. We were constantly fighting. I always drove. He always was the recorder. Kevin's a slob. I mean, Kevin's a pig, man. He eats something that he wears it. And it just annoys the living daylight out of me. He writes 48s, our papers, and there's literally this much on the floor because he makes a mistake, throws it. So I'm driving. I'm absolutely going crazy. So, with that said, you got to understand one thing about Kevin. Kevin's a bulldog. If you give Kevin the number, he's going to call you. But the problem with Kevin is, hey, Kev, I got 5 minutes. What do you need? And half an hour later, you're going. So with Kevin, I had to tell him, look, dude, I'll talk to you for 2-3 minutes. I got things to do. I got to go. And it came to the point where I would just say to him, look, don't get angry at me anymore, because when you call me, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And after that 2 minutes, I'm going to hang up. I don't care what you do with the other line. So you have to understand, and you have to understand something with me. I was doing my thing. I was out working, doing my job, blah, blah, blah. Kevin was somewhere else in the city. I didn't want to have nothing to do with the Bible study. I wasn't going to church. I was just doing my thing. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I didn't want to do anything with this study. I honestly didn't really want to do anything with Kevin. Not that I disliked him or anything. I just was doing my thing. So go ahead.
So God put it on my heart to chase Mike down, and we chased him down until we got involved in a ministry where we've done some really good work with churches and helped them secure their churches and helped other cops. It's called Light and Shield Police Ministry. But we've never really shared our stories with anybody because we never really thought it was that big of a deal. And I never realized what a big of a deal it was until I got to Washington, D.C. last year. And I was down there with Jim Winston and his wife, Penny. And just the three of us went to the memorial. And I went to see my officer on the wall. And I lost it. And I just lost it. I mean, I just couldn't stop crying. I just sat there and I cried and I cried and cried. And I never realized what had happened to me over the years from all the garbage that we've absorbed in this job. God put it on my heart to help cops because we lose, last count, one cop every 17 and a half hours to suicide. God knows what it is when you're retired, because when you go from being in charge of a whole lot of stuff, even if you're just a cop, you're in charge, to not being in charge of the toilet paper at home. And all the garbage that this job brings to your life that you're now have to deal with on a daily basis when you're retired or you're off the job with your family, I would imagine the suicide rate goes even higher. We've lost quite a few officers just recently in Philly to suicide over the last couple of years. One was a good friend of mine, was a lieutenant, and just never saw it coming. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that we need to share our stories. So what I want to do is this. Michael was telling me something on the way up here about a guy by the name of John Cousins. Gets killed, his gun gets stolen. Michael held him in his hand. Held him in his arm as he died, as he bled out. Would you tell us about it, Mike? How it affected you?
1996, I was fairly new on the job, a couple years on the job. was still full of piss and vinegar. I was that guy that came in 15 minutes before the shift, made sure I was squared away, hit the street, and I was always, usually the next guy taking the car over would be calling me in, because I just loved the job. And I worked the lower end of the 15th district. It was a busy district. Wasn't the busiest, but it had its share of problems. So anyway, it was I believe it was August 15th, 1996. It was about 11:15. I report off. I'm supposed to be in headquarters 11:15, and call comes out for shooting on Highway 5300 Oakland Street. I was probably 4 or 5 blocks from there. I got on the radio, responded to it, came in, rolled the corner, and I saw several people outside. As I got closer, people were pointing all different directions. Basically what it was, John Cousin was a detective. He was actually off duty. Yeah, he went to the bar and he had a couple beers and a plate of meatballs and spaghetti. And I know that because of during the trial, the toxicology report and everything came out. So that night I pull up and I jump out. I just think it's another, victim. And I knew John. John had a very distinctive way of dressing. I think he was still stuck in 1954. But John had a thick pair of glasses. They were like yellow and they were thick glasses. And they were knocked off. So when I first saw John laying on the ground, and there was a nurse there doing CPR on him, I didn't recognize him. And it was one thing, I don't know how you guys are, our streets are filthy. And there's one thing that really bothers me to this day. And I always tell everyone, if I ever get shot, anything ever happens to me, don't let me die on the filthy streets. Doing CPR, rescue pulls up, I'm putting flash out over radio. Rescue says to me, hey, you might want to get ID off this guy. Not thinking, I go over and I look and they have his suit jacket opened up, shutting his buttons all ripped down. And I see an empty holster. And I look at it, it kind of stunned me, like it didn't really register to me. And I reach in his back pocket, get his ID, and open it up. And I pulled his shield out. And I remember breaking down, because it kind of hit me hard, because I'm real close with my brother, and he's a detective. So it really, really hit me hard, and I start crying. And I said to him, I said to my sergeant, it's our blood. It's one of us. And he said, yo, get it together, man. Do the job. And it was funny. At that point in time, we talked about leadership. And that sergeant put me right back where I got to be, and I did the job. So.
And how did you deal with it? Did you go to the bar? Did you hang out with friends? What did you do?
I didn't realize this, and it's funny because I didn't really share this with a lot of people. I didn't realize that I didn't realize how much that affected me. Mm-hmm. And then other things in my career started happening. Again, squared away, always on time. It's funny, that morning, after we went to homicide and everything, I sat in the back of a pickup truck. We go down to Maryland crabbing. And I remember being on 95, and my brother and a couple other guys were in the pickup, and I sat in the back and just started drinking. And I didn't realize how angry I was that these are people going to work, and I'm throwing empty beer cans at them on 95. Screw you. I didn't realize how messed up I really was. But
Was that before your first shooting or after?
that was before. That was a year before my first shooting.
So Willie Smalls was your first shooting that comes up next, right?
Right.
And what happened after that? What was your next one?
99, I was involved in, May of 99, I was involved in a shooting downtown, rivalry, point a gun. And then,
That was a running gun battle, correct?
right. And then 99, December 29th of 99, I was in another shooting. And I laugh about that only because me and my partner at the time, we were in highway. Me and my partner, I was ticked off because I was late for roll call a week prior to that. And the sergeant told us that our days were canceled for New Year's Day parade. And he forgot to tell me. So now it's the 29th. We're actually plainclothes detail, which is unheard of in highway. And he tells me in the beginning of the shift, man, it's going to be cold on that parade route. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? And he says to me, he says, yeah, our days are off, we're canceled. I already had plans to go out and party and everything. And I'm ticked. And I said to him, and Ronnie Gilbert was my partner, and I said to Ronnie, Ronnie, we're getting involved tonight, man. I ain't working that parade. And about an hour later, there's a whole story behind that. I won't bore you with it. But about an hour later, I'm downtown. I see a robbery. The guy shoots at me. Now we're running down the street. Now, downtown's a pretty clean area. A lot of shoppers are out. And here I am running down the street, and we're getting in a battle. And my partner was down the other end of the block. And the time he got to us, we high-fived. Hey, you're okay, I'm okay. Bad guy's there. And I said to Ronnie, hey, Ron, guess what? Have fun working that parade. I'm off. So it's kind of funny. That didn't really affect me. But
then something not real funny happened. Highway Patrol has a parking lot. Used to have a parking lot. You walk down, and there was a bunch of trash that was always thrown in this one spot. And apparently somebody decides to play a joke. And we're cops, right? We do dumb stuff. Well, somebody plays a joke and takes a doll out of the trash, and they tie a rope around it and hang it from Mike's truck. Well, it happens to be a black doll, or a doll that appeared to be black. So right away, somebody saw it and said that Mike was hanging this out there as a thing for lynching babies or whatever. And Mike, to this day, won't say who it was. He knows who it was, who did it. But because the city blamed him for it immediately, they never fingerprinted the doll. They never did anything to check it. They just whacked him and went after him really bad, really hard. Mike kept it to himself. Mike, you got to be real short because I want to get to the other stuff. So as we go through this, you want to say anything about this doll?
People know me, know who I am, what I'm about. I'm rough around the edges and everything. I'm not a racist cop. I'm just a cop. I don't care who you are, you're either a dirtbaggy or not. And when the city, long investigation, this and that, and plastered all over the news, I'm a racist, I'm this, I'm that.
And how'd that make you feel? How'd that affect your family?
That hurt me because you're questioning everything that I believe in. But what really hurt even more was the guys in work that I thought were my buddies that turned their back on me. That really hurt. That hurt. Transfer, got kicked out of Highway Patrol, which was everything to me. I was at that time part of a drill team, which we do tricks on motorcycles and everything. But that put me into a real tough spiral. Hated everyone. Didn't trust anybody. It was bad. It was real bad for me.
How did it affect your family when they saw your face on the news?
My wife, I think what happened was plastered for like 3 days on the every news station, and accusations and everything that was going on. And I remember my wife calling me. I was headed to work one day, and my wife calls me. And my wife's a very strong person, and my wife called me and just broke down crying. And it really bothered her, and I think that's when it became personal for me. That's when I was, at wit's end.
So to go fast forward, Mike goes to the 15th district. He goes to work for one of my good friends, a lieutenant at the time, who's now an inspector, Mike Cram. And he goes up to Mike Cram and he says, "I'm not getting involved in nothing in this stinking city." And he used a few other words, and this is exactly what the captain told me. He says, "I'm just going to do the job. I'll back another cop up, but I'm not doing crap. I'm not getting any activity, nothing. I'm not stopping cars. I'm doing nothing." And Mike said, "I understand. Go ahead." Mike Kelly goes out the door. Captain Cram, Lieutenant Cram, sits down at his desk to have something to eat. Shots fired, shots fired. Mike Kelly's in foot pursuit. That was Mike Kelly. He walked out the door and got in a shootout, literally the same day. So much for not getting involved. That was your third, right? And then you went back to highway.
Four.
That was the fourth?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 4 shootings. He's been involved in a couple crashes, one of which we were burying my officer at the time, and the call comes over the radio, and I don't think my heart's ever stopped so much in my life. His crash comes over the air, and we're burying Isabel Nazario, and as soon as they call out his wheel number, I'm like, "That's Mike Kelly." And they're like, "Yeah, he's down. He's on his way to the hospital." I'm like, "Dude, I'm out of here." And they're like, "What?" I said, "Somebody's got to take my post." And I'm running the honor guard. I said, "Either somebody gets to that hospital, lets me know he's okay, or I'm out of here." And sure enough, they did, and I did get to see him and finish the honor guard. So here's my story. Working with Mike, you heard about the shooting. Eventually I went to the Narcotics Strike Force as a supervisor. It's a coveted position by a lot of people. They think it's great. I'm not real big on it. Make a lot of money locking up grandmom and grandpa for buying drugs, because you do a lot of fishnet stings and stuff like that, where you get the buyers and then you get the dealer and stuff. But being a highway cop that concentrated on part 1 violent crimes, narcotics was kind of a dirty business to me. And I was there as a Christian guy who had things changed in my life and things were going on, and I wasn't sharing my faith with the cops that were there. Didn't feel as though that was appropriate. And I had one officer come to me and said, "Sarge, I'm thinking about filing an EEOC complaint about the supervisors in this squad." And I said, "Why would you do that?" And he's like, "Sarge, I have a daughter at home that needs me there, and they keep giving me the details at the end of the day, because I don't lock up as many people as everybody else. And I don't do this, but I do everything they ask me to do." And I said to her, "Listen, give me a chance. I'll work on it. Don't do that." And so we had a conversation, and I briefly mentioned my faith, but I didn't get into it with her. We left that night. If anybody knows anything about narcotics, the way to run in the uniform bureau of the narcotics. You know, you have a plainclothes team that goes out and gets set up somewhere to do a surveillance, and you just kind of wait till they're set up, and then they'll start putting out buyers. So I have plenty of time. I go to Applebee's to grab something to eat, and with that, one of my guys comes over the air to me, Lenahan, and he says, we're in back of a stolen car. It's a Cadillac Escalade. And I said, okay. And he put out the flash, and his Cadillac takes off. And I go over the air. We need permission in Philadelphia, at that time especially, to pursue. A supervisor had to okay a pursuit. So if you get into a pursuit, they're immediately going to raise the supervisor, and the supervisor will tell radio whether or not it's okay to pursue. So Timmy goes over the air with the pursuit, him and BK, Brian McKenzie, and I come over the air. Nathan, Blake, Andy, they're my guys, let it go. And 67 seconds later, the bad guy crashes into Nathan 145 and kills Isabel Nazario that I've been talking to that night. There was nothing I could have done to change that. Even if I probably called off the pursuit, it probably still would have happened. But every day I live with the fact that this little girl didn't have her mom no more. I saw them last week when we dedicated a street in her name. Isabel Nazario Memorial Highway, which is right around the corner from my house. Nothing has affected me like that on this job. Well, 3 things have affected me like that on this job. My shooting, I didn't realize affected me. I would wake up laughing because the bad guy, when he was running through the alleyway, as he had the gun, and I guess it was misfiring, he went like this to protect his head as I was shooting at him. And apparently, from what Mike had told me, one of the bullets had hit the guy in the elbow. So I don't know if it was the one that hit him in the butt or the elbow, but he was trying to hide. The other thing that affected me was having an infant die on me while I was giving a CPR. But what affected me the most, they turned me off to the department the most, is we were running a narcotics job, and a guy pulls up in a car and he gets involved in it. He tries to give our officers a hard time because they got a black male stopped. And wow, this is going to have to be, long story short, he's a politician, and we lock him up for disorderly conduct because people are throwing bottles, the whole 9 yards. He winds up being the sheriff of Philadelphia. Needless to say, the politicians made it go away. He gets elected to be sheriff of Philadelphia. So one day he'll probably serve a warrant at my house, who knows. We tell you all this for this. We really ran out of time. But how do we get through this? We're doing things on this job that your body wasn't designed to do. You weren't designed to go through that kind of stress. The political bullcrap. Holding a guy that you know dead. Talking to an officer 1 minute, and then the next minute you're looking through the car, she takes her last breath. And you're crying the radio, get the jaws of life, get the jaws of life, and then you see her eyes go like this, and you know she's dead. We weren't designed for that. So what do? Most cops wind up at the bar. And that leads to cheating on your wife or your spouse, DUIs, getting in fights, whatever. So the bar's not the answer. What do you guys do? What we want you to do is stop for a second and think about, what do I do to get away from this job, to let this stuff go so I could be a normal human being again? For us, it's our faith. Okay? In Samuel, it says, you are my rock, you are my fortress. And that's who I turn to. Michael brought a verse up last night when we were talking about this that I keep in my Bible for my niece who died in the line of duty, who died a few years ago. She wasn't a cop. Psalm 23, you are my shepherd. I shall not want, though I walk through the valley of death. That's where we turn to get our strength. That's how we get through the day. I turn to my pastor. I turn to guys in my church. Mike will tell you that's where he turns. Where do you turn? If you don't have somewhere to turn, this job will eat you alive. You're either a cop is what you do, or a cop is what you are. And if a cop is what you are, you got a short life ahead of you. Because you're not going to live to be 90, 80, 90 years old, because this job will eat you up. So I want to encourage you this way. Look, there's support groups, there's a lot of things out there. Hobbies, whatever. Gallows humor, that's how we deal with things as cops, gallows humor, right? It's really not good because it stuffs it down. And if you stuff something down your throat far enough, you're going to puke. And when you puke, it comes out really ugly. So the reason we shared all these stupid stories for you tonight wasn't to tell you about war stories, because we could really give you some good ones from guys we know. And there's guys out here that are better ones. But we want you to know what we do to cope with it. If we didn't have each other, we have a small Bible study for cops where it's just cops, active and retired, that come together and they share their heart. The stripes come off, the bars come off. If you're in there, you're a Christian, and you have a discussion, and you can be yourself. And what happens in that room stays in that room. We kind of stole that from AA. What happens in the study stays in the study, right? There is no rank. You need that, guys and girls. You have to have it. If you don't have it, you're going to have trouble in your life. This job just doesn't lead to nothing but trouble. Think about it. I can remember eating a cheesesteak, looking down at a dead body, thinking of, because I was guarding the dead body, and thinking to myself, wow, man, that dude really got shot. Like, who does that? You're looking at the guy, thinking, you're eating lunch and you're watching the guy's body dead on the street. We weren't taught to our bodies weren't designed to do that. We learn to be that way because we become callous. So we want to challenge you today. If you'd like to know where we get our strength, how we get through the day, and how you can come to know your God better in that way, the way we do, please talk to us on the side. Also, any patch collectors out here? No patch guys? All right, because I got a couple patches for you. Anybody like stickers? Bumper stickers? I got some bumper stickers. It says, "In God we trust." Okay? But why don't you do this? We're running out of time. We apologize. This is the first time we've done this together, so it's not choreographed very well. But we want you to know how to get help spiritually to get through the day. And we'd like to talk to you about that. So if you'd be interested in that, meet us over here. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Thank you for your time. I hope it was.